Welcome back. Today, we've got a really fascinating deep dive for you. And, usually when we think about intelligence, there's this underlying assumption that it operates kind of like a peacock's tail.
Right.
Like you have it, so you display it. You walk into a boardroom or a classroom or, I don't know, even just a dinner party. And the absolute baseline instinct is to unfurl those bright, shiny feathers of competence.
Yeah, you drop the right jargon.
Exactly. You make the sharpest observation. You subtly reference that dense article you just read. It's almost a biological survival mechanism. We are conditioned from day one that projecting your smarts is how you win the game.
It is. I mean, it's the ultimate social currency. The
Yeah.
entire modern professional world is basically built on this relentless signaling. It's like, I am capable, I am a threat, I am valuable, do not overlook me.
Right, right.
And we spend just massive amounts of cognitive energy curating this aura of invulnerability.
We really do. But then you start looking at the history of people who have amassed real, unprecedented, terrifying amounts of power.
Oh, yeah. And suddenly that peacock tail looks less like armor and more like, well, a massive glowing target painted on your back.
It really does.
Because the historical landscape is just littered with examples where the ultimate power move wasn't dominating the room with your intellect.
No, not at all.
It was actually convincing everyone else in the room that you were the dumbest person there. So today, we are stripping away that exhausting instinct to constantly prove our competence.
Which is going to be tough for a lot of people to hear.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
But our mission today is to unpack the 21st law of power from our source material. The rule is basically this: play a sucker, catch a sucker. Seem dumber than your mark.
It is the absolute definition as a counterintuitive strategy.
Yeah. Okay, let's unpack this. Why is this so hard for us to do?
Well, because it flies in the face of our most fragile, ego-driven impulses. To really grasp the mechanics of why playing the fool is so devastatingly effective, we have to look at the philosophy of Arthur Schopenhauer.
He dissected human vanity in a way that is profoundly uncomfortable, but entirely accurate.
He really did not pull any punches.
No, he didn't. Schopenhauer pointed out that intellectual ability actually isolates a person. And it isolates them because it inevitably, unavoidably makes others feel inferior.
Wow. Yeah.
There's simply nothing a person is prouder of than their intellectual ability.
Yeah.
I mean, it is the very trait that gives human beings our commanding place in the animal kingdom.
Right. It's our apex predator trait. We don't have like the claws of a bear or the armor of a rhinoceros. We have our brains.
Exactly.
So an attack on that intellect, or even just a casual comparison that leaves us lacking, it doesn't just feel like a social slight.
No, it feels biological.
Yeah, it feels existential. It's like walking around with a giant, fragile glass ego.
Precisely.
Mm.
And because of that underlying biological panic, Schopenhauer argued it is an exceedingly rash, dangerous thing to let anyone see that you are decidedly superior to them in intellect.
Which is wild to think about. Like,
It is.
mhm.
But he observed this incredible double standard in society that still holds perfectly true today. Look at rank and riches.
Okay.
People will tolerate those. You can be the wealthiest person in the room or the highest ranking executive, for people will generally offer deferential treatment.
Sure. They might envy you, but they deal with it.
Right. They might gossip about you, but they accept the hierarchy. But intellectual superiority, that is treated as a personal insult.
Wow.
It is treated as a crime.
I want to push on that distinction for a second because I think it's the skeleton key to this whole concept for you listening. Why do we tolerate the billionaire or the CEO, but the quiet, undeniable genius in the corner makes our blood boil?
That's the core question, isn't it?
Yeah. It seems to come down to the difference between circumstance and biology. Like, wealth and rank are external.
Right.
You can soothe your own ego by telling yourself, well, they got lucky in the market, or they inherited that money, or they just knew the right people.
Exactly. You rationalize it.
Right. But intelligence feels innate. If someone is vastly, effortlessly smarter than you, it implies they are fundamentally better equipped for survival.
You're hitting on the exact mechanism of cognitive dissonance. What's fascinating here is that when confronted with someone clearly more intelligent, the human mind just scrambles to soothe its injured vanity.
We hate feeling dumb.
We despise it. We don't just passively accept our inferiority. The ego immediately deploys a sophisticated array of defense mechanisms to neutralize the threat.
Like what?
Well, we tell ourselves things like, Well, he only has book knowledge, whereas I have real, gritty, street-level experience.
Oh, the classic street smarts versus book smarts rationalization.
Right.
We see it everywhere. It's how we level the playing field in our own heads.
Exactly. Or we compartmentalize their intelligence to make it manageable. We say, she knows her narrow little field of engineering, sure, but outside of that, she has absolutely no common sense.
Oh, yeah. They can't even change a tire, that kind of thing.
Precisely. The classic historical trope from the text is, even Einstein was a boob outside physics.
It's so funny.
We are compelled to bring them down a peg to survive the encounter with our self-esteem intact. Imputing someone's brain power is the unforgivable sin because it strikes at the core of their identity.
Right.
Sadeh, the Persian poet, captured this dynamic centuries ago in his Garden of Roses.
Yeah.
He observed that foolish people are 100-fold more averse to meeting the wise than the wise are indisposed for the company of the foolish.
So the resentment, the sheer hostility, almost always flows upward.
Yes, always.
Which brings us to Schopenhauer's ultimate conclusion, right? If you want to be liked, if you want to actually wield influence without triggering an autoimmune response from the people around you, you must actually be, or brilliantly appear to be, inferior in point of intellect.
Which is where the strategy really begins.
Yeah. And he used this wonderful metaphor of a fireplace. Just as a person instinctively moves toward a fireplace on a freezing day to warm their body, they will naturally gravitate toward people who make their mind feel superior.
It's comfortable, it's cozy, you are providing psychological warmth.
Think about how this applies to navigating a modern corporate structure for a second.
Oh, it's highly relevant.
Right. If you walk into a meeting with a manager whose ego is slightly fragile, and you immediately try to prove you are the smartest person in the room, you are blasting them with cold air.
You are. You're triggering all of their deepest insecurities.
And they will subconsciously look for ways to undermine you just to restore their own equilibrium. But if you subliminally reassure them of their superior intelligence.
Oh, if you ask for their guidance on a problem you already know how to solve.
Yes. Or if you let them explain a concept to you, you become the fireplace. You completely disarm their suspicion muscles.
They let their guard down because they feel so powerful and benevolent around you. They become pliable.
You've essentially bypassed their critical firewall by feeding their vanity. It's incredible. But, while this sounds great in theory for an office environment, how does it actually play out when millions of dollars are on the line?
Ah, right. When you scale it up.
Exactly. This naturally leads us into the ultimate historical case study.
The Great Diamond Hoax?
Yes. We have to step back to the winter of 1872, because this is a masterclass in weaponizing the arrogance of apex predators.
We really have to set the socioeconomic stage here first. It's 1872. The psychological hangover of the 1849 gold rush is still palpable in places like San Francisco and New York.
Everyone wants to get rich quick.
Desperately. People are waiting for the next frontier, the next unimaginable windfall. And on the Marx side of this con, we aren't dealing with gullible, desperate people.
No, these are the heavy hitters.
We're dealing with the most sophisticated, wealthy, worldly financiers on the planet. Men like Asbury Harpending, a ruthless U.S. financier.
Okay.
William Ralston, the incredibly powerful owner of the Bank of California, and even Baron Rothschild, literally one of the richest, most connected men in the world.
I mean, these are men who build absolute empires by seeing through bad deals. Their entire professional existence relies on sniffing out weakness and fraud.
Exactly. And the mechanism of their downfall begins when Harpending, who happens to be visiting London at the time, receives a frantic cable from Ralston.
Okay, what does the cable say?
The cable claims that a massive, untouched diamond mine has been discovered somewhere in the American West.
In the West, like Wyoming.
Yes. Now, Harpending's initial, highly trained reaction is deep skepticism. He assumes it's a practical joke, probably inspired by the recent, very real diamond discoveries happening in South Africa.
Right, because a diamond field in Wyoming. It sounded geologically absurd.
Exactly. But he casually shows the cable to Baron Rothschild.
And Rothschild's reaction is the tiny spark that ignites a massive social contagion.
It really is.
Rothschild looks at this skeptical financier and says, don't be too sure about that. America is a very large country. It has furnished the world with many surprises already. Perhaps it has others in store.
And that is all it took.
That little seed of FOMO from the wealthiest man in Europe completely short-circuits Harpending's critical faculties. He literally sprints for the first ship back to the States.
It's the beginning of elite consensus. If Rothschild thinks there might be something to it, who is Harpending to disagree?
Right.
So Harpending arrives back in San Francisco, and the city is absolutely electric with rumors. And here we finally meet the architects of the con. Two crusty, weather-beaten, rough-around-the-edges prospectors named Philip Arnold and John Slack.
Our heroes.
Exactly. They are the ones claiming to have found this unprecedented mine. Now, they haven't revealed the location to anyone, but they had recently taken a highly respected mining expert out to the supposed site.
Oh, I remember this. They led him on a dizzying, multi-day blindfolded route so he couldn't track their location.
Right, and this expert literally watched them dig raw diamonds out of the dirt, brought the gems back to San Francisco, and a prominent jeweler estimated their worth at $1.5 million.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting for you listening. Look closely at Arnold and Slack because there is a brilliant psychological inversion happening here.
Oh, absolutely.
Because, I mean, if you or I were trying to pull off a multi-million-dollar scam on the world's most terrifying businessmen, our baseline instinct would be to try and match their sophistication.
Of course. You'd want to look the part.
We'd buy tailored suits, we'd use complex geological jargon, we'd forge pristine topographical maps, we would try to project competence so they would take us seriously.
But Arnold and Slack understood Schopenhauer, whether they read him or not. They did the exact opposite.
They played the hayseed.
They played the absolute clodhopper.
Yeah.
When Harpending and Ralston demand they come to New York so the legendary jeweler Charles Tiffany can verify the gems, the prospectors don't negotiate like savvy businessmen.
No.
They act like paranoid, overwhelmed country bumpkins.
Yeah.
They complain that they don't trust these slick city men. They act terrified that Tiffany and the Wall Street bankers are going to steal their claim.
It's incredible manipulation. Because to soothe these supposedly terrified country boys, Ralston, this titan of banking, gives them $100,000 in cash and puts another $300,000 in escrow.
Just to pacify them enough to get them on a train to New York.
Yeah. So they travel east, and the financiers hold a massive high-stakes meeting at a mansion in New York. The absolute cream of American society is in that room: Civil War generals, famous newspaper editors, Harpending, Ralston, Horace Greeley, and Charles Tiffany himself.
Everyone who is anyone.
They are all waiting to interrogate these prospectors, but Arnold and Slack, they don't even show up to the meeting.
No, they don't.
They decide to go sightseeing instead. They are just wandering around Manhattan, staring at the tall buildings like tourists.
We really need to break down the mechanics here, separating the logistics of the con from the psychology of the con.
Let's do it.
Because the logistics were shockingly simple. Months earlier, Arnold and Slack took about $12,000 they had saved from their gold mining days, traveled to London and Amsterdam, and bought cheap, uncut, low-quality industrial gems.
Wait, industrial gems?
Yes, practically worthless in a jewelry setting. They came back, went to a remote, barren spot in Wyoming, and literally just scattered them in the dirt. They salted the mine.
Wow.
It wasn't a complex forgery. They literally just sprinkled cheap rocks in the dust.
And Charles Tiffany, the great jeweler, gets caught up in the hysteria and grossly overvalues these low-grade stones at $1.5 million. He saw what he wanted to see, fueled by the collective greed of the room.
But the reason the con truly worked, the psychological engine of the entire operation, was entirely dependent on Arnold and Slack faking themselves.
Faking their own personalities.
Yes. When they did finally interact with the millionaires in New York, they wore coats and pants that were a size or two too small.
Oh, that's brilliant.
They kept their fingernails dirty. They acted completely bewildered and incredulous at the speed of the big city. By appearing as naive simpletons, they entirely bypassed the critical thinking of these financial titans.
It's the fireplace dynamic.
Exactly.
The financiers felt so intellectually and culturally superior to these guys in their tight pants. They looked at Arnold and Slack, and their brains immediately concluded, these guys can barely cross Broadway without getting hit by a carriage. There is absolutely zero chance they possess the cognitive capacity to orchestrate an international scam.
Their arrogance made them completely blind to the threat.
Their egos did all the heavy lifting.
And we cannot ignore the trap of the elite consensus we mentioned earlier. Once Charles Tiffany says the gems are real, and once Baron Rothschild expresses interest, a psychological feedback loop is locked into place.
Because nobody wants to be the one to call them out.
Exactly. If you are a skeptic in that room, standing up and saying, I think these two prospectors are salting a mine and conning us, carries an unbelievable social cost.
You are essentially saying, I think Charles Tiffany is a fool who doesn't know his own product, Baron Rothschild is gullible, and all of you brilliant financiers are being taken for a ride by two illiterate dirt farmers.
Right. You would be questioning the intelligence of the world's most successful men. You'd be committing Schopenhauer's unforgivable crime.
So the social cost of doubting the mind became infinitely higher than the financial cost of buying into it?
Precisely. They built a trap out of the elite's own egos.
So the financiers are foaming at the mouth, they're wiring tycoons all over the world, but they do want one final definitive test. They insist that their own hand-picked ultimate mining expert must go to the physical site to verify it.
Right. And Arnold and Slack reluctantly agree. But they say, we have to go back to San Francisco first to sort out our affairs.
Buying time.
Exactly. They leave the actual sacks of gems with Harpending in New York for safekeeping, which seems to the elites like a massive show of trusting good faith.
But it was a trick.
It was a tactical delay. It gave Arnold and Slack time to take that $100,000 advance Ralston gave them, quietly sail back to Europe, buy actual sacks of uncut gems, and salt the Wyoming mine a second time, much more heavily.
Which brings us to the execution of the final trap. The expert the financiers choose is a man named Louis Janin.
The born skeptic.
Yeah, he was known across the industry as a born skeptic. He was a man determined to prove this was a fraud. He wasn't going to be blinded by the hype.
So Janin, along with Harpending and several other heavy-hitting investors, meets the prospectors out west. Again, Arnold and Slack lead them on a confusing, circular, dizzying route through canyons for days.
Just totally disorienting them.
Right. The investors have absolutely no idea where they are. Finally, they arrive at the Baron site and Janin gets to work. And for 8 days, this born skeptic digs.
8 days.
He levels anthills, he turns over massive boulders, he washes the soil, and everywhere he looks, he finds diamonds, rubies, sapphires, emeralds.
And we have to pause here because the geology of this is hilarious.
It's completely absurd.
Finding diamonds, rubies, sapphires, and emeralds, which require vastly different geological pressures and volcanic histories to form, sitting together in the exact same shallow topsoil is a scientific nightmare. It's impossible.
Any freshman geology student would know.
Right. Janin's rigorous scientific training should have immediately flagged this as artificially salted, but the psychological momentum of the elite consensus completely overrode his objective reality.
The sunk cost fallacy and the halo effect of the Rothschild Tiffany backing had already done the heavy lifting. Janin was entirely convinced.
So what does he do?
He turns to the investors, standing in the Wyoming dirt, and guarantees them that with proper heavy machinery, they will pull $1 million in diamonds out of this ground every 30 days. He declares it the richest field in mining history.
So what does this all mean for the supposed geniuses in the room? This is a climax of the hoax, and it is dripping with historical irony.
Oh, it really is.
Ralston, Harpending, and the other investors rush back to San Francisco in a frenzy. They immediately form a $10 million corporation. But they have a problem. Arnold and Slack still own a massive piece of it.
And they can't have that.
No. The financiers, sitting in their plush offices, decide they need to get rid of the prospectors so they can hoard all the profits for themselves. So these Wall Street titans decide to play possum.
It's so funny.
They sit down with Arnold and Slack, trying to hide their desperate excitement. They put on grave faces and say, look, who knows if Janin is right? The mine might not be that rich. It could dry up in a month.
They are actively trying to lowball the men who are scamming them.
Exactly. They tell the prospectors, if you insist on holding onto shares in this new corporation, you're going to get fleeced by the unscrupulous tycoons in New York. You country boys won't survive the brutal corporate world. Put your greed aside, take a flat buyout of $700,000 right now, and walk away clean.
Which in 1872 is an astronomical sum of money.
And the prospectors, playing their characters flawlessly to the very end, act like they're agonizing over this tough decision.
Rubbing their dirty chins.
Yeah. They nod slowly, seeming to finally grasp the wisdom of the smart city men, and they agree. They take the $700,000 cash, sign over all rights and the topographical maps to the site, and walk away.
It's brilliant.
Let's just sit with the profound poetry of that for a second. The financiers thought they were the sharks. They thought they were using their superior intellect to muscle these simpletons out of a limitless fortune.
Yep.
But in reality, Arnold and Slack engineered their own perfect, legally binding buyout by weaponizing the financiers' greed and intellectual vanity. The rubes manipulated the geniuses into practically begging to hand them $700,000.
And the aftermath is brutal.
Oh, I bet.
The news goes public.
Yeah.
Prospectors flood into Wyoming. Harpending and his group start spending millions. They buy heavy industrial equipment, hire the best crews, furnish these lavish, opulent corporate offices in New York and San Francisco.
Getting ready for the big payday.
Exactly. And a few weeks later, their top crews arrive at the site with Janin's maps. They dig, and they find absolutely nothing.
Nothing.
Not a single stone. The horrific realization slowly washes over the greatest financial minds of the century. It was all a fake.
The fallout is staggering. Harpending, this legendary financier, is financially and socially ruined. His reputation never recovers.
That destroyed him.
He unwittingly lured the most powerful men in the world into the biggest, most embarrassing scam of the century. Rothschild, to his credit, absorbs the loss, learns his lesson, and supposedly never falls for a blind con again.
And Slack.
Slack takes his cut of the money and vanishes into thin air, never to be found by history.
And Philip Arnold. He simply goes home to Kentucky.
Just goes home.
He committed no technical crime. He legally sold his mining rights to willing buyers who had entirely relied on their own hand-picked independent expert. If the mine ran dry, that was the buyer's problem.
That is insane.
Arnold used his payout to vastly enlarge his farm, and in the ultimate act of irony, he opened his own bank.
He outbanked the bankers. And he did it entirely by weaponizing their ego. Arnold and Slack used this exploit to steal money, but the exact same psychological exploit, weaponizing someone's arrogant assumption of your incompetence, is how you steal a country.
Yes.
If you can use this on Wall Street, you can use it in geopolitics.
That's cool.
Which brings us to Otto von Bismarck.
We are shifting from the dusty, salted dirt of Wyoming to the polished wood tables of 19th century European diplomacy.
Okay, set the scene.
The year is 1865. The conflict is Prussia versus Austria. Otto von Bismarck, the Prussian counselor and one of the most brilliant strategic minds of the century, needs to get the Austrian negotiator, Count Blum, to sign a specific treaty.
Right.
And this treaty is brutally one-sided. It is entirely favorable to Prussia and functionally disastrous for Austria. Bismarck knows he cannot just bully Blum into signing it. Blum is too experienced for that. Bismarck needs a psychological lever.
Now, Count Blum considered himself a master of human psychology, right?
He really did.
He was an avid card player, specifically obsessed with a game called Kins. And Blum had this fatal, arrogant flaw. He constantly bragged to anyone who would listen that he could judge a man's true character by the way he played Kins.
Just unbelievable arrogance.
Yeah, he believed his ability to read people at the card table was an infallible window into their soul.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is a classic heuristic. Highly intelligent people often rely on heuristics, mental shortcuts, because it saves them cognitive load and flatters their self-perception.
Okay, that makes sense.
Blum thought, I don't need to analyze Bismarck's complex political history, I just need to watch him bet. And Bismarck, possessing a terrifyingly effective intelligence-gathering network, found out about Blum's little theory.
So the night before these massive, historically significant negotiations are supposed to commence, Bismarck casually, innocently, engages Blum in a high-stakes game of Kins.
The perfect setup.
Bismarck later wrote about this exact night in his memoirs. He said he played so recklessly, with such unhinged aggression, that everyone watching the table was astonished. He lost thousands of thalers, a massive, eye-watering amount of currency.
But he wasn't just dumping money. He was putting on a meticulously crafted theatrical performance.
What was he doing?
He was sweating, bumbling around with this surplus of nervous, erratic energy. He was saying ridiculous, foolish things. He was acting like a total amateur who had absolutely no control over his impulses or his emotions.
I love comparing this to a modern cybersecurity breach.
How so?
Think of Bismarck as a master hacker trying to penetrate a highly secure server, Count Blum's mind. The server has a firewall that is actively looking for sophisticated malware. If Bismarck acts like a brilliant, calculating statesman, the firewall goes on high alert.
Right, because he's a known threat.
So instead, Bismarck intentionally feeds the system the wrong malware signature. He acts like a low-level, clumsy, brute force script kiddie. Blum's firewall scans this reckless behavior, classifies Bismarck as a low-level threat, and completely ignores the massive data breach that is about to happen.
That is precisely the mechanism at play. Bismarck was feeding Blum exactly the data Blum's ego desperately wanted to see.
Confirmation bias.
Exactly. Confirmation bias weaponized to the highest degree. Blum believed he was an unmatched expert at reading men. He watches Bismarck play like a sweaty, reckless fool, and his ego purrs. He thinks, I have him entirely figured out. Bismarck is aggressive, yes, but he is foolish. He is rash. He has absolutely no self-control.
And the payoff the next morning is breathtaking. They sit down at the polished tables to negotiate the fate of nations. Bloom feels entirely intellectually superior. He thinks he holds all the psychological cards.
He's already won in his own mind.
Yeah. He believes, based on his brilliant heuristic assessment from the night before, that a heedless, impulsive fool like Bismarck is biologically incapable of cold-blooded calculation or intricate, multi-layered deception.
Bloom is so incredibly confident in his own superiority that he barely even glances at the fine print of the treaty before he signs it.
Wow.
He just assumes he has Bismarck outmaneuvered at every turn.
Yeah.
He signs away Austria's leverage without a second thought, and the absolute second the ink is dry on the parchment, Bismarck drops the act.
Just like that.
He looks Bloom dead in the face, the nervous energy vanishing entirely, and gleefully exclaims, well, I could never have believed that I should find an Austrian diplomat willing to sign that document.
The mask slips. Bismarck essentially tells him, I own you, and you did this to yourself. It is a brutal, historical reminder of the immense power of letting your opponents think they have you entirely figured out.
Because when people think they understand you, their guard drops.
Exactly. They stop looking for the hidden traps because they fundamentally do not believe you are smart enough to build one.
It is a lesson in the strategic deployment of your own ego. If someone wants to underestimate you, let them. In fact, help them do it.
Don't correct them.
Right. Don't correct their assumptions. Don't show off your vocabulary or try to demonstrate your strategic foresight. Just let them feel like the smartest person in the room and watch them gladly, eagerly sign away their leverage without reading the fine print.
This strategy of radical underestimation is so universal that it crosses every culture and every century. There is a brilliant Chinese proverb that encapsulates this entire dynamic perfectly, masquerading as a swine to kill the tiger.
It's a deeply visceral image.
Yeah.
It refers to an ancient, highly dangerous hunting technique. A hunter would physically clothe himself in the hide and the snout of a pig and mimic the grunting, rooting sounds of a swine in the brush.
Okay, so he's pretending to be prey.
Exactly. Now, the tiger is the apex predator of the jungle. It is arrogant, fast, and lethal. It sees a pig wandering around, grunting clumsily, and its brain immediately calculates, this is an easy meal. This creature is weak, slow, and stupid.
Right. The tiger doesn't see a threat.
So the tiger lets its guard down, saunters in close, completely unprepared for a complex fight. And only when the tiger is within striking distance, when it is too late to retreat, does the hunter drop the disguise, draw his weapon, and turn the tables.
The tiger's arrogance is the exact mechanism of its death. If the hunter stood up in the brush and yelled, I am a powerful human with a spear, the tiger would instantly go on high alert.
Absolutely.
It would use its speed, its camouflage, and its power to its advantage. But by playing the swine, the hunter entirely neutralizes the tiger's natural advantages before the fight even begins.
We see this swine strategy applied historically by highly ambitious people who find themselves trapped low in a dangerous, lethal hierarchy.
Like who?
Well, if you're highly competent and ambitious, but you lack formal institutional power, you are a massive threat to the people above you. The kings, the CEOs, the managers, they're the tigers. If you show them how sharp you are, if you display your peacock feathers, they will eliminate you, fire you, or sideline you before you can ever challenge them.
So you put on the pig suit. You make yourself look incredibly harmless.
Exactly. Look at Claudius in ancient Rome.
Oh, that's a great example.
The Roman imperial family was a viper's nest, ruthlessly assassinating one another for proximity to power. Brothers killing brothers, uncles killing nephews. Claudius survived to adulthood and eventually became emperor of Rome for one reason. He played the fool.
He stammered, right?
Yes, he drooled in public, he stammered heavily, he acted completely inept and obsessed with trivialities. The political tigers of Rome looked at him and thought, he's an idiot. He's an embarrassment. He's absolutely no threat to the throne.
So they just ignored him.
Exactly. They left him alone. They murdered everyone else, but they let the swine live.
And the Prince of France, who later became King Louis XIII, executed the exact same survival strategy. Surrounded by suspicious, incredibly powerful superiors like his mother, Marie de Medici, who wanted to maintain control, he played the bumbling, uninterested youth. He hid his fierce ambition behind a mask of subservience and dullness.
Which is incredibly hard to do when you're young and ambitious.
Very hard. But when the time finally came to strike, when he finally had gathered enough quiet leverage, He acted with sudden, shocking vigor and decisiveness. He assassinated his mother's chief minister and seized power.
Just out of nowhere.
He caught everyone completely off guard because they had spent years believing he was a harmless pig. Wait, that actually brings up a fascinating nuance to this.
What's that?
We've talked a lot about downplaying raw intelligence like IQ, strategic thinking, book smarts, but this law applies to much more than just hiding your ability to solve a math equation. It applies heavily to taste and sophistication.
Yes.
Why is making people feel more culturally refined or sophisticated just as effective as making them feel smarter?
Because taste and sophistication rank right next to intelligence on the human vanity scale.
Ooh.
Oh, absolutely. Especially in certain corporate, social, or artistic circles, being perceived as cultured is the ultimate status symbol. It implies a certain breeding and access to elite spaces.
Okay, I can see that.
Think back to Arnold and Slack, our diamond prospectors in New York. They didn't just play dumb, they actively played unsophisticated. They acted like they had never seen a nice hotel, tasted good wine, or understood basic city etiquette.
The tight pants, the dirty fingernails, the awe at the tall buildings, it wasn't just a lack of IQ, it was a lack of class.
Right. And those fancy blue blood New York financiers were absolutely laughing at them behind their backs. They mocked their lack of refinement at their dinner parties.
Wow.
But by actively allowing the financiers to feel culturally superior, Arnold and Slack ensured their guard remained permanently down. If you make someone feel like they're your cultural better, they will often keep you around just to act as a foil.
To make themselves look better.
Exactly, to make themselves feel good by comparison. And the longer you are permitted inside their inner circle, the more opportunities you have to gather critical information and maneuver.
There is a fantastic metaphor from nature for this. The opossum. If you picture an opossum, it is not a majestic or intimidating creature.
No.
It looks a bit ugly, nervous, and profoundly unintelligent. And its primary evolutionary defense mechanism against predators is literally playing dead, playing stupid. A coyote comes along, sees this pathetic, lifeless, unappetizing creature, and just loses interest and walks away.
It's amazing.
Who could possibly believe that such a nervous, ugly little creature is capable of such effective, life-saving deception?
It is the ultimate biological camouflage. Balthazar Gracian, the brilliant 17th century philosopher, summarized this tactical humility beautifully. He wrote, "The wisest man plays this card at times. He who poses as a fool is not a fool."
That is such a good quote.
Gracian advised, the absolute best way to be well received by all and to navigate treacherous social waters is to willingly clothe yourself in the skin of the dumbest of brutes. You must be deeply capable of playing the ignorant role when the situation demands it.
But, and this is a massive, crucial but, there is a catch to all of this.
There always is.
We've spent this entire time talking about the immense invisible power of playing the sucker, hiding your brilliance, and letting others feel superior. But as with every strategic law, there is a reversal.
Yes, the reversal.
There is a very specific environment where playing the opossum will get you eaten alive.
Yes. While the general rule is to dampen your brilliance as you are climbing the ladder or pulling off an offensive maneuver, there is one major exception. You must do the exact opposite.
You have to act like a genius.
You must play the unassailable, unquestionable genius when you are on the defensive, when you need to cover up a deception, protect your established territory, or navigate your way out of a sudden, dangerous challenge to your authority.
This is where we shift from the swine back to the tiger. And the story of the legendary art dealer Joseph Duveen illustrates this flawlessly. Let's look at the mechanics of his survival at this New York soiree.
To understand this, you have to understand the art market of the 1920s and 30s. It was the Wild West.
Just totally unregulated.
Yes, it was absolutely flooded with fakes, forgeries, and misattributions. Buyers were terrified of being conned, so they relied entirely on the unshakable authority of elite dealers.
And Joseph Duveen was the top of the food chain.
Arguably the most successful, intimidating art dealer in the world. So he is attending a lavish high society party at the home of a New York tycoon. Now, Duveen had just recently sold this tycoon a painting by the Renaissance master Albrecht Dürer for an exorbitant, record-breaking price.
Right.
During the party, the tycoon's daughter is showing off the painting, which hasn't even been hung on the wall yet, to another guest.
And this guest isn't just a casual observer. He is a young, extremely confident, up-and-coming French art critic. He is a guy looking to make a name for himself by taking down a giant.
Right. The young critic studies the Dürer painting closely for a while, and then he drops a bomb right in the middle of the party.
What does he say?
He turns to the daughter and says, with absolute certainty, you know, I don't think this Dürer is right.
He calls it a fake in front of everyone.
He publicly calls it a fake. The daughter panics. She hurries across the room to her father, the tycoon, and tells him what the critic said.
And the tycoon must be furious.
He is suddenly deeply unsettled. He has just spent a fortune, and a confident expert is telling him in front of his friends that he's been conned. He immediately turns to Duveen for reassurance.
Wait, based on everything we just talked about with Bismarck and the prospectors, shouldn't Duveen play dumb here?
You would think so?
Right. Shouldn't he act surprised, maybe use the fireplace method and say, oh, wow, really? I had no idea. Let's look into it together to disarm the critic and soothe the tycoon. Why does he suddenly go on the offensive?
Because the dynamic has fundamentally shifted. Playing the swine only works when you are on the offensive, when you are trying to climb, pull a con, or extract a treaty.
Ah, I see.
You use it to slip past defenses. But Duveen is on the defensive. He is protecting his established territory, his reputation, and his capital. In this specific moment, humility would look exactly like guilt.
Oh, that makes total sense.
In matters of expertise, authority, and smarts, appearances are what count. If Duveen played dumb, the tycoon would lose faith in him entirely. His reputation as an infallible expert would shatter. He cannot afford to look like a sucker here. He has to be the apex predator.
So Duveen does the absolute opposite of playing the opossum. He puffs out his chest, he walks over and just laughs at the young critic.
Just laughs in his face.
Yeah, he uses this incredibly condescending patrician tone and says, how very amusing. Do you realize, young man, that at least 20 other art experts here and in Europe have been taken in too and have said that painting isn't genuine, and now you've made the exact same amateur mistake?
It is sheer brazen psychological intimidation. He gaslights the critic in front of the entire room.
It's wild.
Notice what Duveen doesn't do. He doesn't offer empirical proof that the painting is real. He doesn't pull out documents or discuss the brushstrokes. He simply asserts his own irreproachable authority.
Right.
He implies that doubting the painting is actually the mark of an amateur, a rite of passage for people who don't truly understand art. And his confident, overwhelming tone is so completely dominating that the young French critic actually backs down and apologizes for his mistake.
It's a breathtaking bluff, because the reality of the situation is that Duveen himself often overplayed the authenticity of the works he sold. He almost certainly knew there were legitimate questions about that Dürer painting.
Without a doubt.
But he understood a profound psychological truth. What really mattered wasn't the objective scientific truth of the canvas. What mattered was that the buyer believed he had bought a Dürer. And to maintain that fragile belief, Duveen had to project absolute, unquestionable expertise.
This creates a very clear, highly memorable dichotomy for how to apply this law in your own life. When do you play the swine and when do you play the tiger?
Yeah, how do you know?
It comes down to constantly reading the room and understanding the nature of the threat. You use humility, the sucker routine, and the camouflage of the opossum to gather information, to lower defenses, and to navigate smoothly upward through a hierarchy without making enemies.
But when your core credibility is suddenly challenged when someone accuses you of incompetence or tries to expose a weakness in a public high-stakes moment where your capital is on the line, that is not the time to be self-deprecating.
Exactly.
That is the time to unleash the full, intimidating weight of your authority and shut the threat down immediately. You have to be deeply capable of playing both roles perfectly, switching masks the second the environment changes.
The highest wisdom is knowing how to make use of stupidity, but also knowing exactly when to drop the mask and bare your teeth.
Think about the massive ground we've covered today for this deep dive. From the dusty, salted diamond fields of Wyoming, where two men in ill-fitting pants outbanked the greatest financiers in the world, to the sweaty card tables of Prussian diplomacy, where a genius intentionally fed his opponent the wrong psychological malware to conquer a nation, to the glittering salons of New York, where an art dealer laughed away an existential crisis through pure assertion of authority.
It's a wild ride.
The fundamental mechanism remains remarkably consistent, though, doesn't it?
It does. Letting someone else feel like the smartest person in the room is very often the most intelligent, calculating thing you can do. It disarms their biological vanity.
It hides your true capabilities.
Exactly. And your intentions.
Yeah.
And it leaves you, quietly and invisibly, in total control of the board while everyone else thinks they're running the game.
It's like we talked about at the very beginning. You don't always need to be the peacock. In fact, the peacock, with all its heavy, shiny feathers, is usually the first thing spotted and eaten by the tiger. Sometimes the ultimate power move is just putting on the pig suit, blending into the brush, and letting everyone else exhaust themselves trying to prove how brilliant they are.
And I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you go about your week. Building on Schopenhauer's concept of intellectual vanity, I want you to really examine how much of your daily exhaustion comes from the constant, unnecessary performance of competence.
No, that's good.
Think about how much cognitive energy you spend constantly trying to prove your worth, your vocabulary, and your insight to people who are already fundamentally determined to view themselves as the smartest people in the room.
It's exhausting just conceptualizing it. We spend half our careers just playing defense for our egos.
Exactly. So what if the ultimate flex of true intelligence isn't proving to everyone that you have it? What if true, unshakable power is having the quiet internal confidence to let others think you don't?
Wow.
How much energy would you save, and how much strategic freedom would that give you tomorrow when you walk into your next meeting and simply let the other person believe they hold all the cards?
That is a phenomenal question to end on. Thank you so much for exploring this with us. We hope it gave you a sharper toolkit and an entirely new perspective on what it actually means to be the smartest person in the room. Stay curious, keep questioning the obvious, and keep diving deep. We'll catch you next time.